Somewhere in America right now, a truck is delivering 10-pound bags of frozen water to a gas station. Nobody blinks. Nobody asks why. But here is the strange part. Ice, something that falls from the sky for free in half the world, is a multi-billion-dollar global industry. People pay for it every single day without a second thought. A bag at the convenience store. A single cube in a cocktail glass at a five-star bar. A block the size of a car used to build a hotel. So how did frozen water become something we buy, ship, sculpt, and fight wars of business over? How did a substance that literally falls from the sky turn into an industry worth more than the GDP of some small countries? This is the story of ice. Not the ice caps, not the glaciers. The ice industry. And it is stranger, older, and more profitable than almost anyone realizes. Let's start 200 years ago, in the freezing winters of New England. In the early 1800s, a young Boston businessman named Frederick Tudor looked out at a frozen pond and saw something nobody else did. He saw money, literally frozen money, sitting right there on the surface of the water. At the time, this idea sounded insane. Ice melts. Everyone knew that. Trying to sell it, especially in hot climates, seemed like a joke waiting to happen. People called him the Ice King as a mockery long before it became a badge of honor. Tudor believed that if he could cut ice from frozen lakes and ship it to hot places like the Caribbean, people would pay a fortune for it. He was right, but it took him years and nearly all his money to prove it. His first shipment to Martinique in 1806 was a disaster. Much of the ice melted before it even reached the shore. Locals didn't know what to do with it. Some had never seen ice in their lives, but Tudor didn't give up. He experimented with insulation, using sawdust, an industrial waste product nobody wanted, to slow down the melting. It worked far better than anyone expected. Within a few decades, Tudor's ice was traveling from the frozen ponds of Massachusetts all the way to India, a journey of over 4 months by ship. Somehow, thanks to sawdust insulation and thick-walled ice houses, more than half of each shipment survived the trip. By the mid-1800s, ice had become one of America's largest exports. Entire towns in New England built their economies around cutting, storing, and shipping frozen water. Workers used horse-drawn saws to slice massive blocks straight out of frozen lakes. These blocks were stored in giant, insulated warehouses called ice houses, some large enough to hold enough ice to supply a whole city for an entire summer. It was physically demanding, dangerous work, done in brutal cold, all so that people in warmer regions could have a cold drink. At its peak, the natural ice industry in America employed tens of thousands of workers and moved millions of tons of ice every single year. Ice wasn't a luxury anymore. It was infrastructure. Then, something happened that should have destroyed the entire industry overnight. Someone invented a machine that could make ice without a frozen lake at all. Mechanical refrigeration arrived in the late 1800s, and for the first time, ice could be manufactured anywhere, in any season, regardless of the weather. Logically, this should have ended natural ice harvesting immediately. But old industries rarely die quickly. Natural ice harvesting actually continued well into the 20th century because mechanical ice was, at first, expensive and unreliable. It took decades of engineering improvements before manufactured ice fully took over. Eventually, though, physics and convenience won. Home refrigerators became common, ice-making machines became cheap and dependable, and cutting ice from frozen ponds became a strange historical footnote rather than a career. You would think that would be the end of the story. Ice was no longer rare. Anyone with a freezer could make their own. So, how is this still a billion-dollar business today? Here's the twist. Making ice became easy, but making ice at scale, safely, and reliably did not. Think about how much ice modern life actually consumes. Hospitals need it to store vaccines, blood samples, and organs during transport. Fishing industries need tons of it daily to keep seafood fresh from ocean to market. Restaurants, hotels, and grocery stores need it constantly, in massive, predictable quantities. Multiply that across an entire country, and you get an industry that quietly generates billions of dollars every year, built almost entirely on something people assume they could make at home for free. The packaged ice industry alone, the bagged ice you buy at gas stations and supermarkets, is worth billions annually in the United States alone. Two companies dominate this market so completely that most people don't even know their names. These companies operate massive automated ice plants, some capable of producing hundreds of tons of ice per day. That ice gets bagged, sealed, frozen again, and shipped out on refrigerated trucks to thousands of stores, all before it has a chance to melt. It is, in many ways, one of the most invisible supply chains in the world. Nobody thinks about where their bag of ice came from, but behind it is a factory the size of a football field, running 24 hours a day. And here's a fact that surprises most people. Transporting ice is often more expensive than making it. Because ice is heavy, bulky, and constantly trying to melt, shipping costs can be higher than production costs. Distance is the real enemy in this business, not temperature. That's why ice plants are usually built close to the cities and markets they serve, rather than centralized in one giant facility. The economics of ice are really the economics of logistics, racing against a countdown clock that never stops ticking. Now let's talk about the strangest corner of this industry, the one where a single ice cube can cost more than a fast food meal. Walk into a high-end cocktail bar in New York, London, or Tokyo, and you might notice something odd about your drink. The ice cube isn't cloudy like the ice from your home freezer. It's perfectly clear, like glass. This is not an accident, and it is definitely not cheap. Crystal clear ice requires a completely different freezing process than regular ice, one that controls the direction water freezes in to push out air bubbles and impurities. Companies now exist entirely to produce this clear ice, using specialized machines that can cost tens of thousands of dollars. Bars pay a premium for it because clear ice melts slower, looks more elegant, and honestly, makes a $15 cocktail feel worth $15. Some artisan ice companies hand-carve these blocks into perfect spheres or cubes for individual drinks. A single one of these crafted ice cubes can sell for more than $1, for something that is, chemically speaking, exactly the same as the ice in your freezer. This is where ice stops being a commodity and becomes a luxury product, priced not for what it is, but for how it makes a drink feel and look. It is proof that even something as simple as frozen water can be turned into a premium brand if you present it the right way. But bars and cocktails are just the beginning. Ice has also become the building material for entire hotels. In northern Sweden, a hotel is rebuilt from scratch every single year using nothing but ice and snow. Guests sleep on beds carved from ice, in rooms with ice sculptures as decoration, at temperatures that hover around -5 degrees Celsius inside the building. This isn't a gimmick that runs for a week and disappears. This ice hotel has operated seasonally for decades, drawing tourists from all over the world who are willing to pay premium prices to sleep in a room that will literally melt away by summer. Building it requires harvesting massive blocks of ice from a nearby frozen river, then carving and constructing the entire structure by hand every single winter, because the hotel is designed to disappear completely once the weather warms up. It's an entire tourism economy built around something that is guaranteed to not exist in 6 months. Imagine building a house knowing with complete certainty that it will melt into a puddle by June. Now here's something that might genuinely surprise you. Sports arenas are part of this same industry, just on a much colder, much bigger scale. An ice hockey rink isn't just a frozen pond indoors. Building and maintaining professional ice for a hockey season requires refrigeration systems running underneath the surface, precise temperature control, and constant resurfacing between games using specialized machines. The energy costs to keep an NHL-sized rink frozen through an entire season can run into hundreds of thousands of dollars annually just for one arena. Multiply that by every professional and amateur rink across the world, and ice becomes an enormous, ongoing operational expense hiding inside the sports industry. Even the little machine that resurfaces the ice between periods, the one gliding smoothly across the rink, is itself a highly specialized piece of engineering, designed to lay down a paper-thin, perfectly smooth layer of water that freezes almost instantly. From sports to science, ice plays another role most people never consider, as a life-saving tool in medicine and disaster relief. When natural disasters strike and power grids go down, ice becomes critical for keeping food and medicine safe. Emergency ice shipments are sometimes flown or trucked into disaster zones by the ton, treated with the same urgency as water or fuel. In medicine, dry ice, which is actually frozen carbon dioxide rather than frozen water, played a massive role in transporting certain vaccines that needed to stay at extremely low temperatures. During major vaccine rollouts in recent years, demand for dry ice spiked so dramatically that supplies became genuinely difficult to find. Suddenly, something most people never thought about became a critical piece of global infrastructure, with entire supply chains scrambling to keep up with unprecedented demand. So when you step back and look at the full picture, ice isn't one industry. It's several industries wearing the same disguise. Bagged ice for everyday convenience, clear artisan ice for luxury drinks, structural ice for hotels and tourism, athletic ice for sports, medical ice for saving lives. Each of these markets operates on completely different economics, different customers, and different profit margins, but they all trace back to the same basic idea Frederick Tudor had 2 centuries ago. Frozen water, moved to the right place at the right time, is worth real money. There's one more twist to this story worth mentioning, and it's a little bittersweet. Climate change is making natural ice increasingly rare in the places that traditionally relied on it, while simultaneously increasing demand for artificial cooling almost everywhere else. Warmer winters mean fewer places can naturally freeze lakes thick enough for ice harvesting or ice hotels, pushing even more of the industry toward energy-intensive manufactured ice. In a strange way, the industry that once depended entirely on cold winters now depends more and more on machines built to fight against warming ones. It's a quiet reminder that even an industry built on something as simple as frozen water is deeply connected to the changing climate around it, and it may keep changing in ways that are hard to predict. Ice started as a wild idea from one stubborn businessman who convinced people to buy something that constantly tries to disappear. 200 years later, it has become an industry involving factories, luxury bars, ice hotels, hospitals, and professional sports leagues, all built on the same simple substance. Next time you drop a cube into your drink or grab a cold bag from a gas station cooler, remember, you're holding a small piece of one of the strangest, most overlooked billion-dollar industries in the world. If you enjoyed learning about the hidden economics behind something this ordinary, imagine what other everyday things are secretly worth billions. That's exactly what this channel is about. Subscribe to the economics of weird things, because the next episode might just change the way you look at something sitting in your kitchen right now.